Hello and welcome to this channel. Well, in this very first presentation, we will be taking up a revision class for the 7th semester, prepping them up for the examination that's coming shortly. So, very first, we are going to brief you about the syllabus of community medicine for paper 1 to begin with. Paper 1 comprises of the man and medicine towards health for all, concept of health and disease, principles of epidemiology and epidemiologic methods, screening for disease, epidemiology of communicable and non-communicable diseases, environment and health, hospital waste management, disaster management, and health information and certain basic medicine statistics. But before we go into the deeper issues of knowing how to approach any question, how to go about the answers, let me brief you about the format of questions being put up in your paper 1. Well, both paper 1 and paper 2 consist of 60 marks, of which group A and group B consists of long questions. In the group C consists of short notes where you have to attempt any 3 out of the 4 given, and each of these carries 4 marks. The group D consists of the explain whys and the differentiation betweens, where again you have to attempt 3 out of 4. And again each of these contains 4 marks. Besides the theory, you have viva of 10 marks, practical of 30 marks, which comprises of the epidemiological exercises, statistical exercises, problem solving exercises, project work and family study, and rest is from the internal assessment. Today, the first chapter that we are going to start our revision with for the 7 semesters, particularly of the undergrads, it is focusing on the concept of health and diseases. It's one of the must-know chapters of the entire syllabus of community medicine, and it is where your basic concepts are built. Each chapter has certain very important areas which you have to be very conversant with it for being exam ready. So there are certain long questions which are built around this in different frameworks. One of the areas is the health indicators with examples, natural history of disease, levels of prevention with modes of intervention, may come in any format. It may come as is, or it may come in relation to any specific disease. We describe the natural history of diabetes mellitus and the levels of prevention and modes of intervention in relation to it. And then maybe another very important area in this chapter is the multifactorial causation of disease. The health determinants and how these act as determinants is also one of the very oft questioned. Regarding the short notes, here is a brief comprehensive listing of short notes that you need to ponder. First is the DALI, then is the PQLI, that is the physical quality of life index. Then is QOL of quality of life. All these indices you people must be very, very conversant with, because these are not only important from the point of view of being asked as short notes in your theory, these are also frequently asked in your viva. The levels of prevention. This area is very important from the point of view of your long questions, your short notes, your differentiation or viva. So it is one of the building blocks of community medicine. And now focusing on the rest is the spectrum of disease, community participation, standardized mortality ratio, community diagnosis, iceberg phenomena of disease, rehabilitation, elements of primary health care, socialized medicine, public health, and emporiatrics. These are the terms in this chapter which you have to be brushing through while you are studying. Then coming to the differentiation from that are very frequently asked in this chapter is the difference between infection and infestation, epidemic and endemic, monitoring and evaluation. isolation, and quarantine. And then there may be the differentiation between control, elimination, and eradication. So as you can see, these are very basic questions, but if you're able to answer them well, it will fetch you good marks. Now coming to one of the first differentiations, infection and infestation. Thus you can approach through tabular way of putting one column for infection and one column for infestation, or you can put it 1 point by 1 point as I have put across in this slide. That is, infection is the entry and development or multiplication of an infectious agent in the body of man or animal, whereas infestation is the lodgement, development, and reproduction of arthropods on the surface of the body or in clothing. Example, lice, itch mite. Infection is caused by the invasion of microorganisms such as protozoas, fungi, bacteria, viruses, whereas infestation is caused by the invasion of complex organisms such as insects and worms. Infection is caused by microorganisms who enter the tissues of the host and multiply and arrest the normal physiology of the cells during the process. Whereas infestation, insects or worms reproduce on the surface of the host or inside the lumens. So this is how you break the definition into several points and create the differentiation. Now coming to a very important differentiation, that is the difference between epidemic and endemic. But here I will seize the opportunity of letting you know how this whole process starts from the bare existence of risk factors in the environment, which spreads, creates at the lowest level the outbreak, which again when it becomes constantly present over a geographic area becomes an endemic, and when this goes beyond a certain normal expected occurrence becomes an epidemic, and when this again spreads over a much larger area it becomes a pandemic. So the outbreak, as you now know, is the sudden increase in the occurrence of a disease in a particular time and place, whereas endemic is a constantly maintained increase in occurrence of a disease in a geographic area. So in outbreak, it may be a case of food poisoning outbreak in a hostel. Endemic, as you all know, that our country is endemic to diseases like malaria, endemic goiter, etc. Regarding epidemic, it involves the rapid spread of the disease to a large number of people in a given population within a short period of time. It could be the cholera epidemic, it could be the typhoid epidemic. And pandemic, thanks to COVID-19, we are all aware of COVID-19 pandemic. That pandemic is something where the spread is across a large region, for instance, multiple continents or worldwide. And as we see the spectrum of existence of disease, to spread of infectious disease, to outbreak, to epidemic, to endemic, to pandemic, the likelihood of annual occurrence decreases as it goes up the line graph. That is, the pandemic is less likely to occur, in fact have the lowest likelihood of occurring annually. Like the influenza pandemic, influenza A pandemic, it changes serotypes and it often causes epidemics. But the pandemic of influenza in the last 100 years, in spite of so many change of serotypes, has occurred only 4 times. So you can see the likelihood of pandemic is as annual occurrence is much lower. But when it comes to the likelihood of health and economic impact, the bare existence of disease risk factors is less likely to cause severe health and economic impact. But when it comes to outbreak and increasingly in epidemic and at the most level in the pandemic, the likelihood of severe health and economic impact is very well felt. As you can see, because of COVID-19, our social and economic life and health has gone for a toss. We're all on a new normal. So you can see here the graphical representation of epidemic and endemic. Endemic is, where the graph is showing a constant level, usual occurrence in a geographic area. But epidemic, there is an excess to the normal expectation, usually more than 2 standard deviation. So now hopefully it is clear that how it is differentiated between the epidemic and the endemic. Now coming to isolation and quarantine. Again, thanks to COVID-19, isolation and quarantine is probably very well understood by all of you, but still I would like to build on it. Where isolation separates the sick people with a contagious disease from people who are not sick, quarantine separates and restricts the movement of people who were exposed to a contagious disease to see if they become sick. Isolation separates and restricts the movement of sick people so they can't spread disease to the healthy people around. Quarantined people may or may not become sick. Isolation is a routine procedure in hospitals and healthcare facilities. Quarantined people, they may stay at home also or another location so they don't spread disease to the healthy people, because that is the main objective. But if you are quarantined and you become ill, then you seek healthcare from the concerned authority. Isolation is usually voluntary, but in public health emergency, officials have the authority to isolate people who are sick. Same here, that is in quarantine, it can also be voluntary, but in public health emergency, officials do have the authority to quarantine people who have been exposed to infectious disease, which you are very aware that when people are coming from international travels, they are quarantined these days for COVID-19 for a period of 14 days. Now let us discuss some very important explain whys. Primordial prevention is a subset of primary prevention. So this question of primary prevention and primordial prevention comes in different formats, but the most commonly asked is the primordial prevention is a subset of primary prevention. There are certain other questions also, like primary prevention is a holistic approach. Primordial prevention is a method of choice for preventing chronic diseases. So you need to explain each of these. In this particular presentation, I will be taking up this question. If you need answers to that, you can comment in the comment section and let me know. Then I'll certainly provide you with the appropriate answer. Well, coming to this question, disease occurrence is determined by several biological, environmental, lifestyle, and other factors. And primordial prevention is prevention of the emergence or development of risk factors in the community itself, in which they have not yet appeared. Example, making students learn at school that cigarette smoking is injurious. Whereas primary prevention is prevention of disease through the control of exposure to risk factors. Example, quitting of smoking to prevent the occurrence of lung carcinoma. Hence, primordial prevention comes across as primary prevention in the purest sense, as it also promotes health by intervening at the very nascent phase of emergence of risk factors. So that's why we can certainly say that primordial prevention is a subset of primary prevention. So now coming to another explain why. Accessibility can't be equated with acceptability of health services. Well, three terms are often used interchangeably, sometimes in a linked way: availability, acceptability, and accessibility. Well, accessibility is the equitable distribution of the health workers, taking into account demographic composition, the rural-urban mix, and the underserved areas of the population. Whereas acceptability is the health workforce characteristic and ability, for example, their sex, language, culture, age, etc., to treat all patients with dignity, create a bond, a trust, and promote the demand for the service concerned. So even if they're available and accessible, without acceptability, the health service might not be used when the quality of health workforce is inadequate, or improvement in the health outcomes will not be satisfactory. Why so? Supposing in a there is a very remote village and they are not very comfortable with their woman being checked up by a male gynecologist. So you have to take into consideration their cultural taboos and beliefs, and accordingly you have to be, or maybe they are not well treated when they're coming to the healthcare delivery point. So that factors, just being there, or the setup being there, the manpower isn't there. If the manpower is there, they are not behaving well or they are not trained well, then what happens? The accessibility is never acceptable to the people who are seeking the health service. Now, a very common question: germ theory of disease takes a one-sided view of causation. The germ theory of disease embodies cause of one-to-one relationship between agent and the disease. It believes the disease agent enters the body of the man and causes the disease. This led to a one-sided view of disease causation, as nothing beyond germ theory was thought and did not recognize that a disease is rarely caused by a single agent alone, but rather depends upon a number of factors which contribute to its occurrence. Because of its lopsided view of take on disease causation, germ theory of disease is taken as a very one-sided view of causation, where it only thinks on a single track. A very interesting question asked. It was asked in one of the very recent exams. Man today is viewed as an agent of his own disease. Justify. Well, man has been the agent of not only his own disease. Man has been crafting his own world. Well, coming to the question, the state of health of man is determined more by what he does to himself than the infectious agent external to him. Why so? Since disease may be viewed as a maladjustment of human organism to his psychosocial environment, resulting from his misperception, misinterpretation, and misbehavior, comprising his psychosocial environment, which is equally important as his physical or biological environment. So, since man is mishandling his environment, and hence this environment host agent interaction, the triad, he is tilting it towards the disease occurrence, making it more liable to be culminating into a disease. And hence man is very rightly viewed as an agent of his own disease. Well, coming to a question that has been having different school of thoughts over the years. World Health Organization definition of health has defect. Explain. Well, it may come simply as the definition of health by WHO. Do you agree with it? Or is it too ideal? Well, the current WHO definition of health, which was formulated in 1948, describes health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity, with an ability to lead a socially and economically productive life. But the most criticism of the WHO definition concerns the absoluteness of the word complete in relation to the well-being. Why? Because complete is neither operational nor measurable, and the definition is too broad-based. Since 1948, the demography, the populations, and the nature of disease have changed considerably. Aging with chronic illnesses have become the norm. In this context, the WHO definition becomes counterproductive, as it declares people with chronic diseases and disabilities definitively ill. Well, some argue that health cannot be a state at all. It minimizes the role of the human capacity to cope autonomously with life's ever-changing physical, emotional, and social challenges, and to function with fulfillment and a feeling of well-being with a chronic disease or disability. So you can see that this idealistic approach of World Health Organization in its bid to define health has its lacunae. Now coming to another very important question, that is community participation. Well, community participation is an active involvement of the people from the communities preparing for or reacting to public health issues of concern. True participation means the involvement of the people concerned in analysis, decision making, planning, and program implementation, as well as in all the activities. While the opportunities for community participation may vary greatly from place to place and at different points in the management cycle, a participatory approach should be promoted to achieve sustainable development. Because there, the feeling of ownership emerges. Success of participatory action depends on the continuous community dialogue where provisional goals are set and tested. Subsequent action is based on analysis, research, and education, and experience is fed back into the process. ASHA, community health guides, skilled birth attendants, Anganwadi workers, they are selected from the local community itself. And their participation is important in ensuring delivery of primary health care to the community. Because they are a part of the community itself, they overcome the cultural and communication barrier and are able to deliver services that are more acceptable to the community. So, by community participation, we can ensure a more acceptable healthcare delivery. So, thank you for today. Please do subscribe to the channel so that you keep getting all the updates that I'll be putting through this channel regarding your exam preparation, further any brainstorming sessions, any important issues, how to prepare for your Viva, what are the questions that you might expect in your Viva, how the family presentation is being crossed, what are the things to answer from your this exercises, the epidemiological exercises, statistical exercises, we will do it all. So stay tuned and be with me in this journey. Thank you so much. Hope you all enjoyed it.